All right. So we are recording this and can stop it at any point for discussion, but there's some people that weren't able to join today. So I want to make sure I get recorded for them. I think I know most of you and I've seen some of you at some past Eventbrites. You know me, I'm Malika Began from Began Development, and I love offering these free webinars once a month just because I feel like development should be for everyone and we should cover lots of different topics and we should all keep learning together. So I know your time is really valuable. I value my time too. I value Lori's time. And so I think this is a topic definitely my clients are bringing up and lots of people are asking about, and no one's really clear on figuring things out, even if they've done it successfully in the past. There's a lot of question marks. And so I am honored and grateful to invite an expert, Lori Heffelfinger from Heffelfinger Company, in today to talk with us about her expertise and what she's seeing in the market. And hopefully we'll all walk away with some clear ideas of how we can be doing it better and maybe some even problem solving for our current situations. So Lori, thank you so much for your time and for being here and just making it possible to keep this thought learning and thought leadership going with the minds on this call to solve the world's problems of working hybrid versus in person. It's a big one today, so thank you.
Yes, well, really looking forward to spending time with all of you. I have a presentation and it's a small group, so feel free to, we can tailor it to the group that's here. We'll just see how it goes. So if you would go ahead and put your name, role, organization in chat and some challenges you're currently experiencing with hybrid. And I'll just, while you're doing that, I'll just tell you a little bit about why I decided to do this presentation. I thought everybody had hybrid figured out, but I'm just hearing from my clients and chief people officers that hybrid is and is not working in their organizations, and they're seeking help and guidance. Okay. So Malika, as you look, just see if you could read out what folks are wanting to get out of this session or what their challenges are currently experiencing, that'd be helpful.
Okay. So everyone except for Lori can see name and title, which is great. And so if you have a challenge that you're hoping Lori will talk about today or when you're willing to share with the group, Jada put participation on virtual trainings and connection with others. Absolutely. I have to admit that during COVID on a Zoom call one time, I thought my camera was off. This is one of my stories about not being on. And I folded my laundry because I thought I can just listen to this and I can fold laundry. And then eventually someone was like, we can see you folding your laundry. And I was like, oh, this is a grad school call. That's not really a good look. Sorry. Brian put problem statement, balancing time in office that now seems less efficient with homework where I can get more done. Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot. Christine put relationship building skills have atrophied, team members defaulting to email as primary communication pathway.
Oh, that's a biggie.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody else? You can chime in or chat, whatever you prefer. Jeff put challenges how to influence senior leaders and HR to explore the best fit solution for how work gets done on-site, hybrid, and remote.
Oh, yeah. That's a biggie. That's
and Kyle, yeah, Kyle put one employee in person versus one employee mostly hybrid, so managing different work styles. Yeah. That's really difficult. People feel left out or that they're other, who's in, who's out. Is it the dominant in the office or yeah. People come to the office. James put people come to the office and I don't know why it's blocking out part of your message, James. People come to the office and Zoom into meetings down the hall. Oh, yeah. We're here, but we're not here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have to admit, when I have a client that tells me we're going to do the training hybrid, I'm like, I'd much rather it be either in person or virtual. So I'm sharing, I started to share my screen. So here we are.
Oh, Lori, I'm not seeing your
Yeah.
slides yet. Can you reshare on your slides?
Okay, what do you see?
Yeah,
I'm seeing your
My
no,
notes.
your notes.
That's not good. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so now can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay. So I love this little picture of hybrid, part office, part out. So interesting enough, you know, as I was doing some research for this presentation and what I'm actually seeing with my clients is that hybrid is actually increasing and even increasing in 2023. Hi, Sue. So in 2022, Gartner found that the future of work, which is remote and hybrid, is a top priority for HR leaders. So it's definitely on the mind of HR leaders. 71% of knowledge workers, which are actually most of my clients, are fully remote or hybrid. And even though hybrid is very popular in knowledge workers, frontline workers, so manufacturing employees and other frontline workers, more essential workers, are demanding more flexibility. So they're wanting a piece of this hybrid action. The full-time in office work requirement. So come back to work. So despite all the news about come back to the office, this requirement is decreasing. And Amazon, who's been in the news, they're still a hybrid. They're still 3 days in the office. So this is increasing. And then we also found a statistic where hybrid and remote companies are growing more. So it's actually in a company's best interest to be hybrid versus 100% in the office. So that's what we're seeing. So we do have a quick poll. And that's, we'd like to know, where are you? What is your situation? Are you 100% virtual? Are you hybrid? Are you 100% in the office? What is your situation?
All right, launching poll 1.
Right.
Did that work? Do you see it? Okay, great. I'm seeing responses.
So nobody is 100% in their office? Okay. Okay. I have a neighbor who literally went from working 100% virtual and no meetings even online to going back to TikTok 100% in the office. Okay, but nobody here. Okay. That's very telling. Okay, good. Okay, so then let's move on to the agenda, what we're going to cover today. So really, we've got 3 things I want to cover, and that's just quickly to get some definitions so that we're on the same page more or less. I would say the definitions are still a little bit in flux. And then we're going to spend time talking about design. So it all starts with design. You wouldn't buy a car that hadn't been designed well, hopefully. And then the third agenda item is really how to make it work. And then we'll spend time on questions, or if you have comments or conversation, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, so the first section is define. And here are the definitions that I have found, and these are GitLab. GitLab is a 100% virtual organization, and they are publishing a lot on out there on how to be virtual. But these are their definitions. So there's virtual models, which are an all remote company, which everything is asynchronous. You know, so they're communicating that way. Remote only. So there's no co-located work, but there's common office hours or common time zone. And then remote first, which is you're predominantly remote, but you do have access to an office space. So Dropbox is an example of that. We have a client, Thumbtack, that is an office like that as well. And then there's hybrid. There's a lot of different hybrid models, but one is called the office centric. So I put Amazon here, come back to work 3 days a week in the office, kind of required, or flexible hybrid, we want you in the office 2 to 3 days a week, but you get to decide, or remote friendly hybrid. So it's maybe a little bit like the remote first, or 100% in the office. And I know for a fact TikTok, at least in the Bay Area, is 100% there. Okay. So those are definitions. Did anyone have any other definitions?
No, I do have a question though, Lori. Have you heard any backfire from TikTok being 100% in the office? Have they lost employees because of that?
I don't know. Trust me, I will be keeping up with this. What they have is they've lost people they've had people recruited away from them, but it's not people leaving because of this. So
especially in the Bay Area, I find that very interesting.
It's so interesting. And I will be keeping in touch with this person to find out how it's going. Trust me.
I have also seen some totally remote and flex hours. So working outside of business hours.
Oh,
yeah. So basically doing whatever you want during the day, working through the night, just getting it done.
yes, like 100% flexible. Yes, we'll get into a little bit of that later, but yes, very interesting. So there's a lot of different approaches, different than necessarily what's in the news. Okay.
Lori, can I add that, like I've seen at Metropolitan, for example, that they've split up hybrid into Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday. So people can choose, but there's no overlap between those two different groups of people, which is the same problem as working all hybrid in a way. So
yeah, so that's hybrid. That's kind of office centric, but by function or department or people choosing. Okay.
Not even by function or department. It's
Oh.
The individual's choice of A or B.
Okay. So there's a lot out there. So this isn't the definitive all end all be, because we're still figuring it out. And so I think the next point, which is really around design, is I think that one of the biggest things I want to emphasize is I think we need to think about what is it we're designing and why are we designing it? And I think, I use the car analogy of you wouldn't want to buy a car that isn't well designed, but you might buy a car that was like first generation and you knew that Consumer Reports or whatever hadn't come out on it and there maybe were some bugs, but still there's been some thought put into the design. So again, I'm saying being intentional is essential. And I'm not sure that everyone is out there being intentional. I think there's some knee jerk. Some organizations are being very intentional, but employees are looking for intentionality. Okay, so let's do another poll, scale of 1 to 10. How intentional would you say your organization has been around either implementing hybrid remote or in the office? I guess in your case, just hybrid or remote. Oh, somebody's been very intentional. Awesome. Who's the very intentional one? Christine?
That's me, Lori. Yeah. I mean, we probably a little too intentional if that's possible. But what's interesting though is as much as that has helped, we still have folks who are never going to get it, no matter the intentionality, how many times you discuss it, how you do that, the senior leadership.
Yeah.
Doing town hall, we did all the things, and we still have folks who still just, I don't understand why we have to do this. So and there's always a piece of that.
So it looks like there's some good intentionality. That's cool. There's someone who's very low. Who's the 3, if you're willing to admit? And you don't have to.
No, that was me. This is Brian. Rather large company and a lot of global locations, and so they're still trying to figure it out. Like where it makes sense to, I mean, we have a lot of manufacturing that's required, we have engineering that's required, but then we have a lot of others that it's unknown, and so we're still trying to figure out the best model. I don't know that we know that yet.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good.
Hey, Lori, I'll just, at least at Pepperdine. So in the business school, right, there's 5 different schools. So I don't really know how it's done in the other schools. But within the business school, it's actually kind of up to the supervisor of the team.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, like it varies. No one's strict about it though, right? It's remote friendly first, but it does vary by team. Even if you're not front facing, it still varies by team. It's up to the supervisor ultimately.
Okay. Great. All right. So let's move into, so thinking about design. There's a 4-step process to thinking about design, and this is Linda Groton's work from Redesigning Hybrid Work. So she talks first about discover. So it's really, you know, it's kind of your typical change project, your typical org design project. You want to think about what's most important for the business. What are the crucial networks, jobs? So networks might be sales teams across a unit, you know, cross units that are doing cross selling, or it might be product development teams, or it could be cross-functional teams or councils, or it could be recruiting teams. So really discovering and thinking about what are the networks that are crucial, and then what are the jobs? So what are the key jobs that are crucial for the business? So I know when I worked in aerospace, it was program management was like a super critical job skill. Could be a key technology owner, could be a key creative, or a sales roles. And then what is it that employees want? And then once you discover that, then it's really thinking about reinventing. So how should the jobs be designed? How do employees interface and collaborate? So, you know, in the case of researchers need to be in a lab to collaborate. When you think about architects are often do these things called design shreds. And so they can do those in person, or if they've got the equipment, they can do it online, or both. Sales teams may be doing cross-selling. So how do they do that? Is it done collaboratively? Is it done in person? So I think really thinking about that. Finance and accounting, a lot of organizations, some of those are, you know, the tools and equipment are in person. So they're thinking about that. So really reinventing how jobs design. When you think about your organizations, have you been doing some reinventing around jobs? Has there been thought and thinking into how jobs are designed? Yes, Brian, yes. Good. Okay, and then once you're doing that, then you really need to model and test it. So what are the various different things that you can do? And then of course implement it. So this is her model. I really like it. And then again, looking at business requirements, looking at the jobs and the tasks and employee preferences. So let's move on. So when you look at business requirements, it's I think we talked about that. Job families, people leaders, manufacturing roles, technical roles. Then the suggestion is also to drill down into job families and looking at one job at a time and how are the tasks actually performed. So that could be as much as 30 tasks at a time. And then looking at employee preferences. So one of the things that is looking at where people are in their life stage. So are they single and living in an apartment? Are they parents and they're caretakers? Are they in a city? Are they rural? Are they wanting to live near family? If they're in an apartment, is having access to restaurants and social important? And so really thinking about where people are and what are their where are they life stage, and you can actually create personas around the various different types of possible employee perceptions. And then thinking about what are their perceptions now and what are their preferences now and what will they be in the future? So what do you think people's employee preferences are going to be for the future? Don't know. Christine.
So
I don't know, Lori. I mean, I have a 22 and an 18-year-old, and they like to be in person.
Oh, interesting.
And they lived through remote school and COVID and hated every second of it. So I just wonder if that will affect those kids who had to do that were old enough for it to sort of sink in, right? Not necessarily the really littles, but will that influence how they want to work?
Yeah.
Lori, this is Brian. I think one of the things that we're gonna start to try to figure out is how do you take, because there are some things that full remote employees get benefit wise that in-person people do not, or hybrid people don't. And so those of us who are in kind of a remote hybrid event, like I can get into the office, but I don't ever need to go. So do I not get the remote benefits that they get and so I think some of those things are part of future of like, this is definitively what it means to be in each. And if you pick the hybrid category, you need to go into the office for a certain amount of time. So right now, I think there's still some things, that's why I wrote in the chat, we're still trying to figure that out, is where do those benefits lie? Where do people actually get? I mean, it's simple things, but it's stuff that does impact people.
Right. I think what Christine, I think what you brought up is really interesting. I have a client whose son is looking for a 4-year degree, and he really, really wants it in person. He's looking for a 2-year degree that he really wants in person. So I think that's really, really fascinating. And then what you said too, Brian, around the different. Then the other thing to really think about too is, as you're thinking about talent and flexibility, is how much flexibility is key talent willing to give up, see, or require. So one of the things we're seeing is that smaller companies who are having to fight for talent, especially like in high-tech areas like the Bay Area and other places, they're going more virtual to attract talent. And larger companies might be going more in person, depending on what country and everything they're in. So again, as part of the mix around thinking around employee preferences, thinking about your talent. I have another colleague whose company just went 100% virtual because they're here in LA and they're looking for banking talent, and it's not here in LA. And so they went virtual to get the LA, 100% virtual, and their product happens to be an online product. So it kind of made sense for them. They were able to recruit execs from outside the LA area. So again, all of this, their execs weren't willing to give up, weren't willing to move to LA. So this whole employee preference does come into play. And then also looking at what helps employees thrive. Is it Fridays off? Is it sabbaticals? Is it social activities? Is it coffee checks? What is it? Okay.
Yeah. Lori, Jeff put in there in the chat a comment. Does not seem that many orgs and their HR teams with managers and hiring managers are intentionally reviewing jobs and new job requirements to determine the nature of the work and if the role needs to be on-site, hybrid, or remote, along with good personality fit with the employee or job candidate. And then Krisha also put her personal situation that I didn't get to read yet, and I just wanted to share with the group. Thanks for sharing that, Krisha. She's starting a new position and it's 100% remote, and she's begging to still have access to her office, just can't do it, needs socialization and just seeing coworkers to get her fix. So
yes. And so that neighbor of mine who was like you, who was 100% virtual, I think that's why she accepted the job that's 100% in person. She's missing connection, and she would say rigor.
yeah.
I don't know that that's related to the virtual, but in her case, so very interesting. And Jeff, yes, so the thing is that this really is an org design challenge and a job design. So it is an opportunity to really look at how work is done and to simplify it, redirect it. It's it's hugely complex, but it is also a huge opportunity to redesign. But again, you have to think about it being flexible. You have to be intentional. Now, here's another thing, like another layer. I think as I've been thinking about hybrid, it's not like 2-dimensional. It's not even 3-dimensional. It seems like it's so multi-dimensional. So here's another dimension. And it's like we hear everybody wants flexibility, but they also want autonomy. So they'll come into the office, but they want to choose where and when they do their work. So now it's even more complete. And so I created this grid here that looks at autonomy versus flexibility. And I'm going to just take you through it, but I would love to have you annotate where with a star. You all know how to where your company is, and then with a heart where you would actually like to be. So the most high.
Sorry to interrupt you really quickly. If you don't know annotating, you just go to view options. Most people will have it at the top of their screen. And you scroll down under exit full screen and hit annotate. And then you can choose a stamp, and you can just choose a heart or an arrow or a check. Lori, do you want to see if people know how to use that before we dive into this exercise?
Yes. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so go ahead and choose your stamp and just start sticking some of them on the page, and I'll clear it. And chime your voice in if you need a little help with that, because I hadn't done it before and I had a little trouble finding it.
Okay. Thanks, Malika.
Yeah, and while people are testing that out, Brian put in a question: are larger companies moving that way because it helps justify the brick and mortar offices sunk costs? What do you think about it from a financial perspective, Lori?
I think that's absolutely. I read something that if companies, large companies especially, started going fully remote, we could end up having a real estate crisis. So I think that is part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to clear it. And if you need help, just hit me up in the chat or raise a hand.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so so it looks like you get the highest autonomy, and the high autonomy is really I get to decide, in addition to it's flexible. So I can work wherever, whenever, with full access to the office. So that would be Caitlin, right? You want access to the office. The opposite end of that would be I'm mandated to be in the office full time, like TikTok. So it's low autonomy because you're telling me I have to do it. Yeah, medium autonomy, high flexibility. I'm mandated to work remotely, but I can choose where I work. So I put GitLab, and that might be where you are actually. And then medium autonomy, flexibility. I can work from multiple locations with a minimum number of days, but they're not telling me which days. But the low autonomy version is I work from home and office, but I have to be in the office on certain days, 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever. Okay, so let's see where we are. So we tend to be more, fascinating. It looks like we're tending to be all over the place.
Which is a great representation for this presentation and topic in mind.
I have to laugh, right? Because this is a small group, and I would say this is a microcosm of what's out there. And even your hearts are diverse. Nobody wants to be in the low autonomy, low flexibility, but your hearts are different too. Wow. That's really interesting. All right. So I think, again, as you're designing, it's thinking about not only just flexibility, but autonomy. And I have 2 CPO colleagues in the Bay Area who have the 3-day-a-week requirement. One company, they mandate which days. And the CPO says to me, we've mandated it. I don't know what's wrong. Only 50% of people are showing up for work. And they know that because they're doing badges. And the other one is not mandated. And they're having a lot of success because they haven't mandated it. It's 3 days a week. People want to come to work. They want to collaborate. Now it's a research organization, and researchers like to collaborate. But so it's just fascinating. This autonomy thing is a subtlety, but a biggie. Okay.
So, Lori, I just want to insert something because someone before said that they have time flexibility, right? About when they can work. So this is really location flexibility, not to do with time, like, oh, I can work at 6 to 4 and then whatever. Is that true? Because there's another dimension about when you do your work.
You're right. I guess I was focused on place, but time is a factor as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because someone brought that up. I was like, oh, there's another.
Yes, there is. So time and place, right. And especially when you look at frontline workers, some of the things I'm noticing is, they have if it's a hospital, people need to be there. It needs to be covered. If it's a restaurant, it's a manufacturing plant. But looking at, or if it's IT people that are online, but do they all need to be there at the same time? Or can people substitute, right? Can people work shifts? So I think there is definitely, that's another dimension, is time. Thanks, Sue. Okay, so this is all about design. So the next topic is about actually making it work. So you've figured out what your definition is. You've spent a lot of time defining and designing. I'm designing. Now you need to figure out what's going to work, what's going to make it work. And I've got a number of different ideas here. And, there's a lot of ways that we could focus on what actually makes it work. But here's some things that I came up with. So one is really establishing principles versus policies. So when and where to work. So really thinking about and then phrasing again is also everything. Explaining how it's important to do what you're doing. Why is it important that you're 100% virtual? How is that working for the organization? Or if you're coming into the office, why is that important versus just mandating? I think Amazon had a revolt from their employees because they just mandated it without a real explanation of why. And Christine and Malika and I know somebody at Amazon, and she went into the office and nobody else was there because her team is international. So, there wasn't a lot of thought put into that. And then I think the whole idea of experimenting and adjusting. So explaining to employees that we're going to try this out for now, and we're going to get data and we're going to see how it goes. And then we're going to experiment and we're going to readjust. And I think that also makes it more palatable for employees if they know that as an experiment. It's like you bought the first model of the car and you're an early adopter, and it's going to change a little bit, but you're good with that. So any thoughts or questions around that? And then another idea is really helping employees adjust to hybrid. So I'm calling this GRIN. So really onboarding them to, it's kind of basic teaming stuff, but applied to hybrid. So really, what are the shared goals? So like in the case of GitLab, they're very clear around their goals and how they're going to work together. What are the roles? Like who's doing what and how? Are they, because I think eventually when you're hybrid, it's like figuring out who's doing what. If you're in the office and people are in their cubicles and they have their names, it's a lot easier. But really taking the time to onboard employees, what people's roles are, what's their potential, what are their strengths, and then where's the information and resources? How are people going to understand where they get? In the case of GitLab, it's all online in a handbook. But for other organizations, it's on Teams or whatever. And then what are the norms? Like, how are you going to collaborate? I know as a consultant, as an external, it's so frustrating collaborating because everybody's using a different tool. I've got my people that I communicate with Slack and some with Google Docs. And so I think, but in an organization, you really need to have some sort of norms around what tools are you collaborating on and what are your rules or best practices around how you collaborate. And then how are you going to stay connected? I think someone in the chat early on said that's a really big issue is, people wanting to get connected. And it's not just professionally for mentoring and learning, it's also socially. So we really do need, we're wired to be social, even those of us who are introverted. You do need, I know when I started meeting with my clients again in person, there was some sort of biological thing around meeting them in person. I could literally feel a difference in how we were communicating. It was astounding. I would not really have thought that pre-pandemic. So I think being intentional around how people are connecting is important. Okay. Think about inclusiveness and here especially, this ensures an equitable workplace. So really thinking about if you've got, I think, Brian, you said, you've got people who are where it's easy, knowledge workers. It's very easy for them to be working hybrid or virtual. But what about the essential workers who have to be on site? How do you create more inclusivity or more flexibility for them? And then ensuring offsite is not out of sight, career advancement. So how do you take care of that?
Yeah, Lori, Brian put in the chat that there's a little discussion just about the operating savings when you don't have as many people in person. And Brian put, it's why service industries are hurting so much, required time, no autonomy. And so just figuring out like, oh, can you keep the best talent then if other people are moving to this? And they, depending on the preferences of what people are wanting, like how do you retain your top talent?
It's a huge issue. Yeah, it's a huge issue. So Malika, are you seeing anything here in inclusiveness with your clients?
Wait, sorry, say that again, Lori.
Are you seeing anything around inclusiveness? Do you have any thoughts around inclusiveness with your clients?
I mean, I have so much of my training in working hybrid is with McBeard, which was fully remote before, and Caitlin's on the call too. She can chime in about that experience. And so I think I'm really shaped by the fact that we had this incredible culture where things were not mandated. And that's sort of how I've continued to move through advising in my org development is that when you mandate, it really kills something. And sometimes you have to, but like trying to do everything we can to make it so that people really want to be there. And I'm not talking about like the bar cart, but like the Amazon example you gave, like if the whole team's there, you're going to want to be with them. Like you're missing out on the career advancement. You're missing out on the learning. Like how do you create a culture that even quarterly has one meeting where everyone's together and no one, maybe that's mandated, but I felt like from what I've seen in the way that I'm advising clients right now, it's about building buy-in and opt-in versus starting with the rules and the heavy hand of like, here's what's required of you. Clear expectations, absolutely, but mandating has been we've received a lot of pushback and probably lost more money on the pushback from that than if we'd tried some other tactics.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. We have a client that they're 100% virtual, but they do these quarterly retreats.
Yeah.
And people are just ecstatic to be there together.
Yeah, that's how we were. Big hugs. Everyone was, we were a hug company, very young company at the time, but there was an electric energy. Like people got really excited and planned lots of things around their trip to LA for the quarterly.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing is really, so this is related, is helping employees thrive. So basically developing their competence and their skills so that they're actually able to contribute in greater and greater ways. And then ensuring relentless and sense of belonging. And then this is super important. And this is one thing I think people get very excited about the idea of teaming. It's almost kind of sexy, but I don't see a lot of organizations really taking the time to do this. And so I think it's super important to, as teams and people are coming together, to really take time to form and help people get to know each other personally and professionally. I think it's time to also, you need to take time to build trust. And so it's a process that takes time. How are people going to work together? How are they going to collaborate? Are they comfortable asking each other for help? And are they comfortable admitting mistakes? And this is harder to do when you're hybrid or virtual. So hybrid is harder. It's harder than in person, and it requires more intentionality. It may be better, but it isn't like you can just leave it to chance. And then I think super important to create norms and to spend time talking through so that people are able to figure out how to work through conflict. So we're finding, I think people in the younger generation are struggling with conflict. But here's another really interesting stat. Hybrid and remote employees are 40% more likely to experience tension and conflict. How many of you would agree with that? Yeah, I'm sure I'm totally seeing that. So this business of taking time to be intentional to helping teams form, build trust, and create conflict norms is super important. And then how do you measure performance? Everyone's like, how can I measure performance? So measure it by results against expected goals, how cohesive the team is, and development that actually improves capabilities. Okay. So in summary, hybrid is an opportunity. It's an org design challenge. It requires good leadership and intentionality, and it achieves productivity and engagement. That's my thinking. So I'm leaving time for Q&A. So let's say, which of these ideas has your organization done well? Maybe you can just shout them out. And which of these ideas would you like to explore further or take to the next level?
Jeff asked a good question in the chat while people are formulating their questions too. Are you hearing of many cases where companies, CFOs, are repurposing some reduced building operating costs, like exit a lease, and allocating some of that money for more intact and project team travel costs? And Erwin, Kyle, Brian all chimed in if you guys want to put your voices in the room on that.
Are you seeing that? I'd say that's really smart.
Yeah, that's definitely what I've seen on our side. We just exited our lease a couple months ago, and using about like 30-ish% of that savings for additional travel for most of our kind of hybrid or kind of remote workers to come in occasionally. So that's kind of travel and then kind of hotels close by the HQ here.
One of our clients, the client that was 100% virtual, also took their real estate money and did similarly for those quarterly meetings. Yeah, great.
So ours isn't going back into travel costs, but it's going into innovations, just because as a medical device company, we have to keep those innovations coming in. So several of our plants that are uninhabited, we've either sold or are in the process of selling, just to use that money more towards innovations that we can be bringing into the company. I did have a question for Malika, because one of the challenges I see when you're virtual for a period of time and suddenly you do bring you talked about your quarterly meetings, everybody coming in, and that energy that gets created by that. What we can often see is with leaders, they'll see that happen and then they'll be like, see, this justifies we need to be together more often. And I think part of that is actually the scarcity of it, is because you were only together once a quarter, when you got together, that energy was there, and then everybody carried that energy into their own work. And so in development roles, we kind of see, no, it's not more is better in this case. It's being face-to-face for that period of time actually is beneficial. So I don't know if you've ever had leaders that have dealt with that, or heard of leaders that are like, no, we need to be together constantly. And that may not necessarily be the case.
Yeah, I definitely that has come up multiple times. And when that happens, I say, okay, let's test it out a little bit with like, okay, so we've got our quarterly where everyone's together. Then maybe one team wants that and we'll do something with their team like monthly. And those usually aren't international teams, by the way. It's usually US based teams that I've done that with. And we sort of push it to show the leader and like how much do you retain that energy? And it's usually not more than once a month from my experience. If they're thinking like, we want to be in the office more just to have this energy, I think you're exactly right, Brian, and pushing back on that because it's the magic of the less is more that really makes that culture.
I think, too, you know, in some organizations, leaders are doing a lot of travel too between sites.
Yeah. And meeting culture, having so many meetings that may not even be meaningful for everybody on the call, not the right people on the call. So a big thing we look at is meeting culture and figuring out how often to meet.
Yeah, I think as I reflect, Lori, on what you shared around the design and that piece, like I think about our investment professionals, and we have data that shows when they weren't together, our investment results went down. So
Oh,
because of how they work,
right.
it doesn't work for them not to be together significant chunks of time, right? So that around that design piece again. And just like our customer service frontline people, we have all the data that says the days they work at home, they're far less productive than the days they work in the office, right? So there's another role. We still haven't changed. We still say just 3 days a week, even for them, even with the data showing we're losing productivity. But that design element around roles is super important.
Here, I have another slide that I put at the end. I didn't think I was going to have time to share it, but let's see. That looks at the best use of technology, and so it does apply to in person versus lean media versus rich media. So synchronous, what works, what can you do, what needs to be done in person versus what can be done online. And I think so. It also speaks to various groups of people. Should they be in person, lab people, or should they be dealing, can you do it online? And so something that's more, are the investment people, or is it more creative?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, another thought that occurred to me about the attraction of talent and just answering the work from home ask is additional flexibility in the benefits, like this unlimited PTO movement that seems to be coming to fruition. I find that very interesting.
Unlimited PT. Oh, so basically you have time. Again, as long as you get your work done, you can do what you can work whatever.
No, meaning there is no set amount of, you have 2 weeks paid vacation. Right. You can take as much vacation, all the vacation, and really you take no vacation or whatever. You know, they're betting that you just won't because you can't. Mm-hmm. Yes. And then also they don't have to keep as much money on the payroll for all the payouts. If you leave, they have to pay that, you know, PTO that you haven't taken.
Yeah, and so I think some of that's culturally dependent. If you have a very high octane, intense culture, it's going to be, it's not going to be cool to take vacation because right. But if you have a culture that's more open and your leaders and people are frequently taking and using their vacation, yeah, so that's interesting. You have to think through that. Mm-hmm. I'm working with a nonprofit where the executive director just recently got a grant to take a 3-month sabbatical because she probably wouldn't take time off otherwise.
I think that's a phenomenal idea. Think about it. If you could stay at a company for 8 years and have 3 months paid off, you might really work 2 more years than you would just to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what other questions or comments do you have? Nothing.
I would ask the question, for those of you who have brought hybrid work to, the companies that brought hybrid work to it, how much of it was taken, how much of the work to prepare to do it was taken as a organization design project versus a reaction to what the masses are asking for or pushing for? Like, how many of your companies went and actually assemble a design team to go out and put together a plan that like, not just, okay, let's go ask the boss what he wants and then we'll design that, or let's go find out what all the supervisors want, we'll design that. How many of them actually did a real design project around it? Christine did?
We did. I was part of that group. Yeah.
Of course.
It was senior leaders. So we had senior leaders doing the design.
That's really great.
Which is why Christine could put down a 10 about intentionality.
That's right.
Our group is probably, our entire organization is less than 40 full-time, and we have more reacted the second half of what you were saying. Coming out of COVID, it's, that we're not going back to how we were. And so it's almost reacting more to, is this working? Is this not? Rather than we're making it this intentional choice to stay that way. And I think having that flexibility is helpful in some ways because, it allows the leadership to sort of decide based on client load and, where clients are. Because we are a client service-based organization. But other times, I would love some more design. I think it just is, it's hard to find that balance.
Yeah. I think some companies have said, okay, phew, the pandemic's over, so let's go back to the way we were. But we can't really do that. Or they just haven't really thought it through. And then I think others like Christine's have really, it really does require. So I think I have been surprised that there hasn't been more. I think there was so much thought put into what we do during the pandemic, and it feels like there's been less thought post-pandemic. But I think there's still time. Okay.
I think some of those skills got lost a little bit, Lori, during the pandemic. Like one thing we've seen here is over-indexing on how everyone feels versus like planning and driving for getting work done, because we were so focused on like so much support during the pandemic. So trying to tip that back takes this intentionality that we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah. So all of you that are here, I'm sure you're interested. So you're being dubbed the ambassadors to intentionality.
Intentionality and design.
Intentionality and design. And so if you would like more tips on hybrid work, you can put your email in, and Malik and I will continue to keep you on our list for tips that we have. And then if you would like a free coaching session on a specific hybrid challenge that you're having, we're happy. One or both of us are willing to do that with you as well. So there we have it. So this has been great to have such a small group. I like this.
Yes, I'm going to stop the recording now.